Married for 19 years before my wife cheated on me. I wanted to share my story with the younger generation before I die, quite frankly. I have lung cancer and I don't expect to be around much longer, so this information needs to get out there. I got married when I was 18 in 1964. It feels like I'm not even the same person anymore. I used to be in good physical shape, and now I'm stuck in a wheelchair. My wife and I both had to work full-time since I didn't have the income to support both of us. I worked in construction and she cleaned hotel rooms. We never had any kids, and we still had time to ourselves on the weekends. I don't think we ever argued, but this was so long ago I'm losing details. Though, and we didn't have any issues getting along. Over the years I started to make more money and she was able to quit her job and stay at home. I would work longer nights though, and our marriage turned more into friendship, honestly. We rarely had sex, and although I still loved her, I felt like it was different. We didn't spend enough time together towards the end. I take the blame for leading us down the wrong road with my job. As you will read later on, this wasn't the only issue, but still I should have addressed the situation while I still could have. One night I get back from work and at first everything seems normal. Dinner was ready and we had the TV set to baseball, my favorite back in the day. I talked to her in the kitchen for a little and went to my room to change out of my work clothes. When I went in there, I found a box of condoms on my nightstand. I started to panic because I had a vasectomy years before this and never used condoms. I immediately asked my wife about them and she couldn't think of an explanation in time. She started crying and came clean about the cheating. She invited her friend from work over for sex while I was out and apparently forgot to get rid of the condoms. I'm not ashamed to admit I was crying as well after hearing that. I tried to find out why she did this and she said she just wasn't attracted to me, was lonely, and never enjoyed our sex. I didn't know what to say and ended up leaving. We got divorced after 19 years of being married. In my 40s I was a disaster. I lost all confidence and motivation to go on. I started drinking and eventually became an alcoholic. It took me until my 60s to kick this habit. I couldn't look myself in the mirror while thinking I was a failure of a man. I wanted to date again, but I just thought the same would happen again. It never occurred to me that I was bad in bed and I really didn't have any good answers. My skin started to wrinkle a bit, especially on the back of my legs, but I took pride in maintaining my figure for a while, and when I had sex during our marriage I swear she enjoyed it. I kept my tough guy appearance through my 30s, and would still wear my bandana during sex, which was a turn-on for her. I was generous and always went down on her when she wanted me to. I used cock rings to maintain erections and I could always orgasm extra hard, which was a fetish of hers. If I tried my best, by definition I couldn't do anything else. As time went by though, I started to think about the idea that at an older age sex wasn't too important, and about 5 years ago I started dating again. We don't have an active sex life, but she assured me that there was nothing wrong with me. I remarried last year, which made me so happy, but unfortunately that's when I got my cancer diagnosis. Since then I've lost a lot of energy and my new wife is the only one that keeps me going. We are trying chemo, but the future looks bleak. In my remaining days I want to share some knowledge I've collected over the years to make the world a better place. My mental abilities are also slowly waning, so I need to do this before it's too late. I hope all reading this can learn something from me to make their life better.
Well, thank you for sharing. You should keep a journal and write down all life lessons that you've learned when you think of them. I wish you the best of luck and try to stay positive. Glad you have a loving wife. Seems like you truly deserve to have someone so caring finally.
Story 2. I already forgave her cheating, but now I saw details and can't cope with the way she had sex. I am really freaking out right now and hope you guys can help me. My girlfriend of 5 years has cheated and I already forgave her. Now I learned that the sex was much worse than I expected and I don't know how to handle this. It happened about 2 months ago. My girlfriend was at a party at the shared apartment of some of her friends. Nothing special. I wasn't in town as I had to work in a different city. The next day she called me crying and told me that she had cheated. I was shocked. When I came back the day after that, we had a long talk. She didn't tell me much details and I didn't ask for it. She said that she had had a few drinks and just went with the flow and then had sex there. I actually didn't ask with whom. As she seemed to be really sorry, I tried to get over it. It took me some time, but I actually managed to really forgive her and I thought our relationship was on a good track again. Her cheating wasn't a topic at all anymore. I admit that I was wondering about details from time to time, but I didn't want to talk about it and thought that it doesn't matter. However, I was very, very wrong. Yesterday I talked to a guy who was there as well and he seemed to be very surprised that I had been able to forgive her. I tried to explain to him that I appreciated her honesty and that she never tried to hide it at all. I wasn't able to understand his confusion until I was finally brave enough to ask about details. I almost blacked out when he told me. To cut a long story short, it wasn't just normal sex with one guy. She apparently slept with at least 3 of them and did things she'd never do with me. I still have no words for it. Actually, I thought he was making this up, but he had proof and I can't get this off my mind now. I don't know how to ever cope with this. I know that I didn't ask for details, but it still feels like she lied to me, even though she technically maybe didn't. I hate that I went through a lot of mental trouble to keep this relationship alive and now have to learn this. I am completely freaking out right now.
Some might say sex is sex, but a one-on-one compared to a gangbang is a whole different animal. It takes a special type of mindset to have 3 guys run through you while having an audience cheering on. And as the guy you talked to had proof, I will assume he was part of the audience. Your girlfriend will be forever that gangbang girl, and you will be the guy they shake their head at. This has to be a blow to your dignity. Start to get it back by dropping her.
Story 3. My wife, the sex worker. My ex and I met in college. She was the most beautiful girl I had ever seen. She always had a crowd of guys following her around. I had some classes with her over the 4 years, but I never pursued her because, well, all the other guys. One day after class, she asked if I would study with her and the rest is history. So we married. Starting our careers in the same industry, different companies. A male-dominated industry. I found immediate success while she struggled. She changed jobs in the first year. She continued to struggle. In the 3rd year she became pregnant with our first son. She worked through the pregnancy. A few weeks after giving birth, in a routine physical, her doctor asked to do a biopsy of her cervix. The results came back as precancerous cells were found. The doctor advised if we wanted more children to do it as quick as possible as this will progress and a hysterectomy will be needed eventually. So when she was up to it, she became pregnant again. She gave birth again to a boy, within a year of each other. Afterward more tests were done and different DRS advised to do the procedure now as we should not wait. With 2 babies, still infants, she had her procedure done. She was heartbroken that she was done having children as we had wanted a large family. She poured herself into being a great mother and she is. She became a psalm. She took care of everything at home. Meanwhile, my career was moving along. I was offered a position with another company with a large salary bump. Life is good. When the boys went off to school, she volunteered at school and was a fixture there. I should mention that we had close friends we went to school with. A and B. We saw each other often. They started their family about the time we did. They have 1 son. The families went on vacations together, dinner, outings. We were best of friends. After the son was born, the mother went back to work and is very successful. B had a good job also until about 2001, where his job was eliminated. He struggled to find work in his field as the economy back then really affected his field. So the decision was he would be a SAHD while looking for work where we lived, as they did not want to move. The X and B did things together with kids. When the kids were all in school, they still hung out. You can now guess they had an affair. This story I know is long but not over. After about a year of this, hot sex in the AM, B asked X if she and I had ever talked about a threesome. It was all fantasy talk with us, as we were still having a great, if not slowing down, sexual relationship. B had a friend he wanted to bring into the bedroom with them. The X agreed. The day came and this guy, C, came over to B's house. He took his suit off as X and B got warmed up. So they had their threesome. Afterward, the guy told them that he usually had to pay for sex, so he left a couple $100 bills and asked X if he could have a 1-1 with X. She told him she needed to think about that and B would get back to him. Eventually, C recommended someone else and a business was born. Eventually, B was re-employed and had to leave X on her own. She used a different cell phone. She rented out a storage unit and made it her closet/office. She used the money to buy outfits her clientele requested. She even bought a car. She did not want her minivan spotted at a hotel. The guys had to pay for a room at a nice hotel. She kept the car at the storage unit. Everything was in cash. She never brought the money into our lives that I know of. Though we would send the kids to different day camps during summer. She claimed she tightened up our budget to pay for it. She only worked during school hours. She always picked the boys up at school. On a few rare occasions, B would pick them up and keep them until she got home. Our home life never suffered. I admit I was working a ton and moving up the ladder. The weekends were our family time. Sex was generally on the weekends. I thought because of my work life this worked best. Most nights we would cuddle on the couch watching TV. Almost done. 2016 comes along, we have one son in college, the other a senior in HS. I get a call from B. X is in the hospital. He was vague but said she is hurt bad. I rush to the hospital. My wife is hooked to a bunch of machines. They have already cleaned her up and taken her for x-rays. She has a broken jaw, broken nose, fractured orbital bone, possible concussion. She will make it, but will be a long road ahead. A police officer was finishing up and left. I of course want to know what happened. She was crying, talking gibberish through her sobs and pain meds. A nurse said I should let her rest. They were moving her to a room soon. She handed me a bag with her clothes. I looked in and asked if these were hers because she never wears heels and the dress was unfamiliar. The nurse said this is what they brought from the hotel room. So they pushed me out of the room. I called my sons to let them know. Later that night, when the fog of the drugs were wearing off, I got some of the story. She drifted off again. I had my youngest son sit in with her and I called B. Why did he call me? How did he know before me? What's going on? So B came clean about what my wife was up to, leaving out the affair and his involvement. I was devastated. We eventually get her home after surgery on her jaw. The nose would wait. She convalesced at home. As she got stronger, I got the whole story. I called A and told of the affair and B as a pimp. She threw B out. As she got on her feet, I told her we were done. I asked her to move out. She moved in with B. I got the divorce rolling. I am sitting here 5 years divorced. I still love her. It is as if she had died. The grief is unbearable. My boys know what she did. I have not spoken to her since she left. Update: my wife is a sex worker. Did not update as there really was not anything to say. Until last night. I received a call from my oldest son, R, who is out of town for the holiday weekend. A friend called him to tell him his brother, S, had been in a motorcycle accident. He was with him but did not see the accident as he was riding ahead. I rushed to the hospital ER. They were cleaning S and were sending him for x-rays. I was told to have a seat and the DR would be out. A few minutes later, as I had my head leaning back and my eyes closed, I heard my name. I look up and my ex is standing in the doorway. She asked for news. I said I was waiting. She asked if she could sit with me. I invited her to a seat near me. I have not seen her in 5 years since the divorce happened. I did not know what to expect. I assumed that she would be disfigured from her beating. She was not, although her face was not as flawless as I remember. The one thing I did see was that her eyes no longer sparkled. This was a feature I never got enough of. Even with a mask on, her eyes did not look the same. Funny, what you notice. When she smiled, her face used to just light up. I imagine she just has a resting bitch face now. Anyway, while waiting we had a nervous catching up talk. She mentioned she liked the landscaping I did and how the plants now matured really look nice. This tells me she has been by the house where I have no idea where she lives, and my sons were told never to mention her to me. During the and after the divorce, I tried to purge any remembrance of her. I replaced the bushes in the yard as it was something she had planned and planted. I did not mention that the inside of the house was redone also. I even ripped out a wall. I had a construction dumpster in the driveway for many months. She asked how I was doing. I don't know why, but I was honest that I had put myself at a standstill by working too much. However, I recently have been to a therapist and joined a gym. I also have taken up bike riding. She volunteered that she no longer just left it there unsaid. She stayed with me a couple months. She also was seeing a counselor who encouraged her to take some college courses in her degree field. That took a couple years. She is now employed full-time. She said she has dated minimally, leaving the statement open for me to answer. I figured the boys were keeping her up to date on me, so I had nothing to add. The doctor appeared and discussed the extent of injuries. The most serious was to his foot and ankle pinned under the bike when it went down. They had scheduled him for surgery today. Everything is good, he just needs to heal and rehab. So he will be in until at least tomorrow, depending on his head injury, slight concussion. I offered my house to stay as I have the room and can work from home. We will finalize that today, although that means his mother will want to visit. That will be a healing process for me. Update 2. My son is healing well. He still has a way to go. We have decided he will stay here while convalescing. He wants to go back to work next week. His boss is setting up something so he can work from home. I barely get him in the back seat of my SUV, as he has to stretch out. It would be a nightmare driving him to work and back every day. Everyone has been asking about the ex coming over. I leave when she comes. I go to the gym or a bike ride. My oldest son has tried to have a sit-down dinner with the 4 of us, but I shut it down. She has been very gracious. She has not tried to force anything. She comes over and sits with our son. She will cook dinner for them. She brings groceries when she does cook. Sometimes his friends come over and it gets a bit rowdy for me, but he forgets about his problem when there are visitors. To say we never talk would be untrue. Our conversations do not stray from our sons or their lives. Last update, my wife was a sex worker. This will be my last update. My son is healing nicely, the DR says. He has a ways to go with physical therapy. He is hobbling around. Still at my house. Working from home. I have returned to the office to give him some space. Now the ex has started what many of you have said. She is doing little things around the house. My son is not all that tidy. So she is cleaning after him, doing his dishes. She will make a meal for him and always leaves a plate for me. I tell my son that can be his lunch the next day. She asked me the other night if I would be interested in going out to dinner tonight, as my son has some friends coming over. I told her no. A little later she mentioned us getting a meal just to clear the air. Again, I told her no. I finally said we ended long ago because of your actions. It took me a long time to get over what was lost. I do not intend to revisit a relationship with you. She said okay. She understood where we stand. I did say I did not have a problem with her coming over to visit our son until he gets back to his place. I thanked her for cleaning up, but it's not necessary.
You handled it like a boss. Your ex has really nowhere to go emotionally, and you are the closet body she would like to leech onto you. Your ex has something broken deep inside of her, and you didn't know it at the time. Maybe she didn't until she cheated, and then totally changed from the person you thought you knew. I think for your recovery after your son is out, please sell the house and have a fresh start. Plenty of life left in you, and you deserve happiness. Also, please update on how you're doing. You bring encouragement to people who have suffered and can be an example that you can survive. Peace, friend.
Story 4. Wife is out getting laid right now. This weekend my wife, 38F, and our daughter, 13F, went to visit her mom. I couldn't go because I couldn't get the time off work, and we decided it would just be a girls' weekend for them. I'm a firefighter in a large southern city, and I'm on a call and gearing up when our dispatcher calls in to tell me that there is some emergency. I'm not really needed on the work call, so I get my cell phone and find a bunch of texts from my kid and a couple from a number I don't have in my phone. In the course of about 11 text messages, I learn that my daughter has gone ice skating and fallen and broken her wrist. She's in the emergency room, but cannot get treatment because no one can find my wife. The number that I don't know belongs to a friend of my wife's who has gone to the emergency room to sit with my kid. She was the chaperone for the girls who had gone skating. So I call this friend, and after a lot of hemming and hawing she admits that wifey has gone to dinner with some random guy. Well, we always leave our location shared with the family because of my job. And sure enough, I pull up an address and Google it, and it's a fucking hotel. This was 10 p.m. It's now almost 4 hours later and she hasn't answered my texts, but she did finally call our kid. I have permission and insurance information, and she got a cast and a referral to see an orthopedist when she gets home. The friend took our daughter back to her grandmother's and texted me. She said, "I'm sorry you had to find out this way about a guy's name. Apparently it's been going on every time she's gone home that I haven't gone. Meanwhile, I've worked countless hours of overtime to pay off our house, take us a nice vacations, send our daughter to the most expensive private school in our city. Am a fool." Update: wife claims that this guy is just a friend, and that they were at a coffee shop the whole time. She really must think I am stupid. I pay all of our bills, so I logged into our cell phone account and found one particular number that she has called and texted far more than any other. I haven't confronted her other than to say that I was disappointed that she wasn't there when our daughter truly needed her. I've taken a few other steps to protect myself, but I'm not going to discuss here. And it took me all about 15 seconds to figure out who the guy is, and of course he is married as well.
Adiol, just a friend. Be prepared for every excuse in the book when she is finally confronted. Be prepared for crying, profuse apologizing, saying it didn't mean anything, she'll end the affair, etc., etc. Remember, it's all because she got caught, not because she's truly remorseful. Please don't fall for the usual cheater bullshit, and please tell me you have screenshots of her being at the hotel and all the texts from that friend. Have another bag packed and tell your wife she is no longer welcome in the house except for visitation purposes. I'm sorry, buddy, but your marriage is over and has been for a while now. Lawyer up and protect yourself at all costs. Follow their advice to the letter and don't make any rash moves until they say it's okay to do so. Let the other man's wife know when the time is right and blow his world up too. I'm a firefighter too, by the way, L. You risk your life for your community and bust your ass to provide, and this is the thanks you get. So sorry, brother.
Story 5. My girlfriend of 2 years cheated and I didn't find out till she was engaged 3 months later, but I got the last laugh. I met my ex when we were both attending college. I was 24 and she was 22. I had never really dated much before her. I had just gotten out of a toxic year-long relationship that didn't work, but we were amicable. The other girl was seriously depressed. I loved her, but she was so overwhelmingly depressed I could do anything. I consider myself an empath and her depression would seep into me. So I broke it off. My ex was the one that sort of approached me as we were both living in the same apartment complex. I had gone out of my way to help her a few times, but she asked for a ride, and that was what sparked the friendship then relationship. I would spend hours with her whether she was at home or closing at the sandwich store she worked at. She was taking time off from school due to depression and a failed engagement from a year or so ago. Though as far as I know she never finished school period and transferred twice to other universities. We partially bonded over her story about who she had been betrayed and cheated on by her ex, though I now question how much of the story was true. We became inseparable. She introduced me to her parents only after 2 months of FWB. After a few months, I wanted to become my girlfriend since I simply had no interest in other girls aside from her. She declined, saying she wasn't ready because of her past engagement. This should have been my first red flag, but I, like the idiot I was, gave her a pass. We continued dating exclusively. She didn't date anyone else and neither did I. A month later I brought up our status again because if we were exclusive anyway, why not just admit what we were? She continued to fight it. There were times during our relationship where things seemed perfect. She seemed to like everything I liked. She had similar goals and we just seemed like a perfect match. But sometimes I would notice backhand remarks about me. She would sometimes compare me and talk about her different exes. We would sometimes fight over such a small thing and I would try to de-escalate it, but she wouldn't have it. She would run out of my apartment and at times I would chase after her. She would become angry that I did that, saying I should give her space. So the next time she did that, I wouldn't chase after her and then she would accuse me of not caring about her. She also began to gaslight me about certain things I remembered her saying, though at the time I didn't know what gaslighting was. But like a sucker in love I went with it. Many of my friends would remark to me when I spoke about her that I could do better. That she didn't treat me right, but I just brushed it off. People listen to your friends, they usually are looking out for you. After dating for a year I would still bring up becoming official BF/GF, but she was still resilient. She would still say she wasn't ready, but I was the best guy she had ever dated. All of her friends knew we were dating, but to be honest I didn't like them. She would invite me to hang out with them, but they were very cliché-ish and I'm not like that. Also they had a cat and I'm allergic, so I would use that as an excuse. As time went on we would go on dates, she would call me every night and we would stay on the phone all night until one of us woke up the next day. She said due to her depression I was comforting and helped her sleep. We continued to have problems at times where she would even get physical. She slapped me hard on 2 occasions. Both were not because we were fighting but because she thought it would be funny. Each time I told her that was disrespectful and that since I would never do that to her, I expected the same in return. During one of our fights she once stated, "My roommate knows all the guys that would be willing to be NCMOs in the complex, so I don't really need you." But finally, after a little over a year of dating, she gave in and decided to be GF/BF, but I noticed that she seemed to keep it secret to everyone except her family. I thought it was weird, but seeing as I had gotten what I wanted, I paid no attention to it. I'm going to put this in here and say there were times I wasn't a perfect so. I also deal with depression, and the stress of work, school, family, and her became too much at times. I lashed out but never hurt her. I would point out the things she had done that were hurtful to me. We broke up several times. Sometimes I would break up with her and sometimes she would break up with me. But each time one of us would relent and come back to each other. One time I was a bit manipulative and self-harmed to show her how much it was hurting me. She had also self-harmed and expressed being suicidal during us dating, and to be totally honest, I got the idea from her. I was truly in love with her. She told me she was with me. We discussed marriage, children, where we would live, etc. During this time she moved twice. First to an apartment down the street and then to her parents' house about an hour north. During when she lived in the apartment down street, she threw a party. When it was over, none of her friends stayed to help clean, just me. She told me this was proof I'd be a good husband. After her move to her parents, I would visit her almost weekly. But I began to notice a bit of distance at times. She was replying slower and slower to my texts and calls. But if she called or texted me, she expected a quick reply. Whenever she needed me, I would come to her. Even at 1 a.m. in the morning when I had work and school the next day. After a couple of months I began to suggest getting engaged, but then she started to do the same thing she had done with being GF/BF. She would use her depression from her past relationship as an excuse. And then she asked if we could go back to casually dating. This was the dumbest thing I had ever done. I said it was okay. I thought this would show her that I was the guy for her. Over the next few months she would go on dates, but she would tell me about them and tell me how much better I was than them. I continued to not date because I was a sap in love with her. But I had told her if she found someone she wanted to pursue, I would end our relationship and she could go after him. But then after talking to my friends and family, I had a realization. That why was I doing all this for her when she wasn't even my GF anymore? So I told her and she agreed that any physical relationship would end until we got back to being exclusive. Except, it didn't. We would go on dates and she would guilt me, pressure me. And I would give in. She would then immediately afterwards would become angry, saying, "Why couldn't you resist? Why didn't I stop her?" She became very abusive and hurtful. The worst was when she told me that if she got pregnant, she would never tell me and only she would decide what to do then. That hurt so much, as I've wanted to be a father and would never leave my children alone. But I would simply fight with her and we'd end up making up. During all of this we would continue to talk about a future together. She would see a mixed baby, I'm Latino and she was white, and say how she saw the cutest baby that could have been our baby. Whenever she was depressed, she would call me or ask me, "Would you still marry me?" And I would respond, "Of course I would. I love you." It wasn't until Christmas when I was in Florida visiting my brother did I begin to suspect something more was up. I'd text her. She wouldn't respond. I'd call her to do the phone thing at night, but she wouldn't answer. But one time she called and asked if I had some movie on DVD, and when I asked why, she said I wanted to watch it with my family, but I could sense something was off. When I came back from vacation and started the new semester of school, she came to visit me, sort of. She came to my university for some reason and lost her Fitbit and called me to help her. I came to help and she spent some time together, but I could feel something was different. She then told me she wanted me to come visit her in 2 days at her parents' house as she had something to talk to me about. It was then I knew what was coming. I talked to some of my friends and prepared for the worst. When I got to her parents' house, it was late. She asked me to come at 10 p.m. She came into my car and we talked for about 30 minutes to an hour. She told me that she no longer wanted to date me. And I agreed. I told her I had felt her becoming distant and I asked her if it was someone else. She denied there was something else. She said she simply no longer felt we were right for each other. But then she said other things. She said that she never considered me husband material. That she never saw us getting married, having kids. That she had always known from the beginning. She even said another reason she didn't want to be with me was that her kids wouldn't look like her because of her being white and me being Latino. This is especially funny now because she likes to say how progressive and not racist she is, right? This shocked me. I remembered back to all the plans we made. All the times she had asked if I would marry her. All the times she had talked about our hypothetical children. That hurt the most. I told her I loved her but that I agreed we were done. We decided on no contact. She decided to block me on Facebook, saying she knew if I blocked her, I wouldn't be able to keep her blocked, so she should be the one to do it. I said fine. We didn't end up blocking each other on our phones due to if there was an emergency. I had no family in state. As I drove away, I felt sad but also felt as if a huge burden was lifted from me. For the next month it was an uphill battle. I would be depressed at night. I realized she had made me codependent on her. I had become accustomed to her nightly phone calls. I felt very alone. There were many nights on the floor of my room in tear-filled agony. But I threw myself into my work, my school, and my friends. But then, about a month later, I got a call from her early in the morning. I answered thinking it was an emergency. It wasn't. It seemed as if she had but dialed me, but that didn't make sense. We hadn't spoken in a month. What were the chances of her accidentally calling me? I could hear a conversation but only bits and pieces. I could hear her voice but also a voice I didn't recognize the other voice. It was definitely a guy. I heard something about snow and I swear I heard my name mentioned, but then the call ended. I know I shouldn't have, but I reached out to a few friends and heard she had started dating someone. I then reached out to her, I know I shouldn't have, and asked if she was all right. It took a few days for her to respond. She then said she had but dialed me, but she had wanted to speak to me. She said she really missed my friendship, and for a few minutes we spoke as if nothing had changed. She told me she had started seeing someone. I told her I had heard and she asked how, and I told her from friends. By then I had seen a picture of the guy. She began talking about him and about his flaws. I just listened, but I began to feel weird about it. She then spoke about his hair being weird and I responded, yeah, it is a bit, but I guess she had been speaking about his hair years ago, and then began to question how I knew what his hair looked like back then. I responded sorry, thought she was talking about now. She then told me that she had recently been getting a lot of random friend requests on FB and she asked if they were me. They weren't. We ended the conversation shortly after. And I began to have a weird feeling about it. I was sort of happy for her, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized I didn't want to continue talking to her. I messaged her the next day and told her, while I liked talking to you like we used to, I think we should continue to not speak. She agreed. I then proceeded to block her number. A week later, while on campus, I noticed I had a voicemail even though my phone hadn't rang. It was from her asking if I was home. She came to drop some things off. I personally felt like there wasn't anything worth her returning, and it pissed me off that she had come and dropped the stuff off at my front door since no one was home. I became really annoyed. I had told her no contact anymore. I then decided to write her an email. I told her basically that I had loved her with all my heart but that she had mistreated me in a lot of ways, lied to me, etc. I told her to thank her parents for being kind to me. We had a rather good relationship and they actively told me how amazing of a BF I was. I then proceeded to tell her I want no contact of any kind. That she was now blocked from my phone. I said though we live about an hour away now, it would be possible to run into each other due to friends living close to me and such. I told her the way you treat me is how I will treat you if we see each other. If you treat me like a friend, I'll treat you like a friend. If you treat me like an enemy, I'll treat you like an enemy. If you treat me like I don't exist, I'll treat you like you don't exist. I sent the email and didn't expect to ever hear back from her. Boy, was I wrong. A few days later, I received a reply from her dad. Her dad, mind you, is an ex-Marine and a lawyer. In his email he stated that I should leave his daughter alone. He accused me of stalking her, not sure how I was, seeing as I was an hour away and busy with school, work and friends. He accused me of creating fake FB accounts and cyber stalking her. Once again, I didn't create any to do that, though I had looked at her account from a friend's account a few times, but that was it. I mean, who hasn't? But then he used that line about treating her the way she treats me and he highlighted that part and said I consider this a threat. He proceeded to tell me to leave her alone, otherwise he would get a restraining order. I was blown away. Her dad and I had always been on good terms. I just couldn't believe what I was reading. I spoke to a few people and having studied a bit of law in university responded to him. I told him, look, I want nothing to do with your daughter. She was the one who reinitiated contact. In fact, she came to my house, without my knowledge, a week ago. If I'm a stalker, why would she risk coming to my house? I told him that we both know what he had said were unsubstantiated and no judge would ever give them a restraining order. I told him never contact me again and I'll do the same to him and his daughter. It was then that I wondered what was going on. What stories was she telling people about me? What sob tale is she spinning and why? I told some of my friends about what happened and they were blown away too. They just told me that I had dodged a nuke and I should be happy. I thought the story would end there, but like I said, this is a cheating story, a long one but a cheating story nonetheless. So we had broken up in January. Just after the first week of April, a friend of mine messaged me while I was working and told me that my ex had just gotten engaged. I was floored. It had only been 3 months. For the girl that had constantly said how hard relationship had been for her because of her cheating, abusive ex-fiancé, it just didn't make sense. But what was interesting, my friend told me, was a comment that someone had put on her announcement. This person was congratulating her on her engagement and so happy she could help them get together back in November. The same November when we were still going out. Yes, weren't exclusive at that point, but to me, since I had given her several outs and she lied about there being someone else, I consider that cheating. I was livid. And then everything came into place. That's why she became distant at Christmas. That's who she wanted to watch that movie with. That hurt, but I got on with my life. I was still having depression issues. Trust issues. I spoke about it to some people. Friends, church people. But the more I spoke about it, the more I learned about her. People who had knew her and didn't know we had dated came out and said, yeah, that girl had issues. They told me things they probably shouldn't have told me, but whatever. I found out all the nasty things she said about other people and I began to realize that she never really cared about me. She simply wanted someone to care for her and then dump once someone better came along. I realized that the reason I fell in love with her was not because of who she was, but what she pretended to be. She had heard about me, knew I was a nice guy and decided I was empathic enough to trick. She simply reflected myself back at me and I thought I was dating someone similar to me, but really I had been dating a narcissist. But this helped me understand a lot about myself. That I care too much, love too deeply, and need to be careful who I give my love to. Lesson learned. So half a year passed. I hadn't run into her, but I had heard she had moved back to my city with her husband, so much for me being a stalker. Some of my friends had a few run-in with her, and one embarrassed her by making a sexual innuendo about something she had done. Love you, Danny boy, brothers for life. I got invited to a friend's wedding. I couldn't make it to the actual ceremony, but I made it to the reception. I was just finishing up making a small speech making fun of my friend. Dude had a laugh that was so annoying and loud, you wouldn't believe. I was ending my remarks and was about to sit down when a mutual friend started walking into the room. And who was right behind her? My ex and her husband. I saw her and was a bit surprised. Just as she was about to walk into the room, our eyes met. And in the moment, instead of walking into the room, she pushed her husband back into the hallway out of sight and quickly followed. I was taken back and stepped out to the other side of the building to collect my thoughts and feelings. I was overall fine, but the shock of seeing her was interesting. After a few minutes, I came back into the room and noticed my ex and her husband had never entered the room. I then asked my friend if he invited her, and he said yes. I told him a heads up would have been nice, but he said that he didn't even think about it. He wasn't that close of a friend, more of a mutual friend of one of my best friends. Anyway, minutes passed and the new couple was about to have their first dance, so we all moved some chairs out of the way. I happened to be on a side of a door putting chairs away when my ex came through that exact door, saw I was right next to her and ran to the other side of the room with her husband in tow. We avoided each other the rest of the reception except for a couple of glances. But in that moment, I felt whole again. All those months after the breakup I felt broken and like a piece of myself was missing, but in this moment, seeing how she reacted. How ashamed she seemed to be. I felt my power coming back. I felt truly happy for the first time. Even though she was married and I was not, I had won the breakup. She was ashamed to even look at me. I had no such problems. I had an overall clear conscience. And now here I am, over 4 years after the breakup, writing this. I'm still single, but overall I'm happy. And Maddie, if you end up reading this, F you. I'm the one who ended up finishing university and you're just a housewife. After all that talk about changing the world and shit. All you're ever going to change are dirty diapers and be a liar and a cheat.
Dude, next time you write something like this, include snacks and a bathroom break. That was Ling. But good for you getting your life back on track and moving on. Depression can suck you in after something like this. And seeing the shame and self-admission in her eyes is just the cherry on the cake. You waited, you won.